Welcome to the Based Boomer podcast on Eschatology Matters, part of the Fight, Laugh, Feast network. I recently listened to John Harris address Tim Keller and the Trinity on a Conversations That Matter podcast episode. Even though Keller's approach to culture and politics frustrated me, I never thought his theology less than thoroughly orthodox. John begs to differ, and it's hard to disagree with him. You'll find a link to the discussion in the show notes below. I went to Westminster Seminary, Philadelphia from August 1986 to June 88 and graduated with an MAR in systematic theology. I also got something completely unexpected. I met a young woman who would become my wife less than a year after I arrived. It so happens Keller was a professor at Westminster at the time, and he became our premarital counselor. As I've told people that over the years, it always brings a response of surprise. Keller is and was a big deal in evangelicalism. From my graduation in 1988 to 2009, I had no idea he had become Tim Keller. Big deal. I decided to take a deep dive back into apologetics and learn he'd written The Reason for God. After reading that, which was very helpful, I started listening to his talks and sermons, which were also helpful. Up until Trump, and even some years into his tearing a hole in the space-time continuum when he came down the escalator, I didn't understand there was anything wrong with Keller's gospel-centered approach and via media cultural apologetics. His for the city approach to church planting and winning the cultural spiritual battle there seemed right to me. His using the term social justice was a warning sign, but I just figured he was a boomer 60s reject and was obsessed with civil rights and racism. I read his book, Generous Justice, and was less than impressed, but not alarmed. Then Trump. As I explain in my new book, I wonder when it stops being new. Anyway, Trump's disruption of the space-time continuum was the beginning of a massive years-long red pill experience for me, one that continues to this day. Harris is responsible for some of the more current red pilling, and even for my new podcast, pretentiously called the Based Boomer Podcast. And to top it off, it's on my favorite YouTube channel, Eschatology Matters, because it does. Thanks, John. As I explain in the book, it wasn't Trump himself that caused all the hullabaloo we've been going through the last 9+ years, but the reaction to Trump. Nothing like it has been seen in American history. Maybe Lincoln, who was of course successfully assassinated, unlike Trump, who by the grace of God escaped the assassin's bullet. Even with his social justice blindness, it was Keller's politically equating left and right on the political spectrum that really bothered me. I learned it was his via media cultural approach, which some call third wayism, which I had previously found helpful, that contributed to this woeful lack of understanding of the current cultural and political moment. I wrote a post on this at my blog a couple years ago in case you're interested. The link will be in the show notes below. Now I see all of this compromised his theology, or his theology compromised all of this. The old chicken and egg dilemma. As Harris points out, Keller isn't to the level of badness as some people whose theology is more compromised. But to say the least, it's unfortunate he couldn't see these things. I still thank God for the positive influence he had in my life, and it was substantial. I'll leave it to God how it all sorts out in the end.
Seated here at my right hand, the